All right, everyone, welcome to the Tonto's Demise Week 13 recap. Anything interesting happen since the last time I was on here? A couple of things have gone down in the league. Things of I don't even know where to start. Why don't we do the matchups first, and then we'll get into a little bit about what's gone on in the past week here. So, because I don't really think anybody watches this anyway. Maybe like one person anymore. But anyway, I'm only so exciting to listen to and watch. But all right, week 13. Still, for some reason I can't adjust yet to the fact that that's not the last week of the regular season. We got one more to go still. Anyway, we had all sorts of playoff implications here in week 13 with Biscuits, Boomers, Ed, Jetling, Brian, everybody trying to climb into the playoffs here, cling to the playoffs. And actually, the way that things kind of turned out, Brian did end his losing streak and clinched the playoff spot. So kudos to you, Brian, there. But the other guys here, all those guys who were 6-6, only one of you won, and that was Boomers. Zach, Mystery Man, who started 0-3, quietly won a bunch of games. I think like 5 of his last 6. And so he was the only 6-6 team to win this week. He leapfrogged Biscuits, Yinzers, and Ed. However, since those 3 of you guys lost, you all have the same record now, and Boomers is only 1 game ahead of you. Really, you all still have a shot of making the playoffs here. Boomers still has a chance of dropping out because Ed has more points than him. Yinzers has more points than him. You all have more overall points right now than Boomers. So even though he is 1 game ahead of you guys, you have more points on him, which means, depending on the matchups and how things shake out, if Boomers can lose, I don't know who he's playing here in week 14. Is it Dub? It's not Dub C. Boomers is getting Yinzer Jags. So, yeah, that's basically a win and you're in. Maybe, I don't want to go that far. But yeah. For Boomers, you win and you're definitely win and you're in. For Yinzer Jags, win and get a little help. And you might be able to sneak a playoff spot. Because Biscuits gets Hillbillies with possibly, don't know who his quarterback might be for this week. And Brian already has his playoff spot locked up. He's going to be either the 4th or 5th seed, depending on how things shake out. I don't think there's no possible way. He's too far behind in overall points. Why am I talking about all this stuff before we even get into the matchups? But anyway, like I said, I was going to put off all this stuff. So yeah, Brian said if Boomers can win, he could move ahead of you. And if Brian loses and Boomers win, they could jump to 4 and Brian drop to 5. But yeah, there's no way you're moving up to 3. Hillbillies there, you are locked into that 4-5. playoff matchup. Who don't know who you'll get, but I said Ed. He plays Possum. That could, I mean, Possum. Never know what's going to go on with him. Always a tricky matchup there. So Yinzers is playing Boomers, so that'll be good there. And then who else? Yeah, those are the teams. Boomers. So two of you guys are playing each other. Boomers and Yinzers, and then Jim has to beat Brian to have a chance. Biscuits is currently third up between the 6 and 7s in points, slightly ahead of Boomers actually. So yeah, depending on how these matchups go and how many points your teams score, two of you are gonna make it. I don't know which two of the four of you are gonna make it, and two of you won't. Currently, Yinzers and Biscuits are on the outside looking in, but that could change. So it's going to hopefully be a very interesting week 14 for those four guys, because there's going to be a lot riding on those matchups. Said Brian, doesn't really matter if you win or lose. Jim needs to beat you, but you don't need to beat him for anything to really change for you. Yeah, because like I said, there's no way with 8 wins you could drop to 6. You're stuck in that 4-5 playoff window. But anyway, what led up to this was week 13. We had the defending champion, Biscuits and Porn, going up against Darkwing Jet. Darkwing trying to keep pace with the Wizard and Dub C Hooligans, trying to maybe squeak a playoff bye here, snatch it away. I should say snatch it away from probably Dub C, maybe at this point. Biscuits trying to get win number 7, not fall under 500 at this point, with 1 game left to go. Have a shot at 8 wins and probably get in the playoffs here. However, Darkwing Jet says, sorry, Biscuits, maybe you won't even have a chance to defend your title this year, as Darkwing scores an even 183, getting the victory over Biscuits, who had 160.25. All right, for Darkwing, Russell Wilson goes for 30. Big problem here, though. Justin's receiver trio, which was emerging, takes a big hit this week as Tank Dell gets injured, scores a 0. Fortunately, it doesn't cost you in the matchup, but he breaks his leg and he is now on IR. CD Lamb goes off for another 32.5. Tyreek has a bink, scores 38.5. For Justin here to replace, you have a wide receiver to replace Tank Dell. We're looking at currently Dotson from Washington or Osborne from Minnesota. There's not even very much on the waiver wire either here, so we'll see what Justin does, but that's definitely a big hit to his team going forward. He's already locked up a playoff spot. Probably going to be the 3 seed, maybe the 2. So, but yeah, that's definitely going forward. That's a big hit, unfortunately, for Justin's team. James Conner, revenge game at Pittsburgh. He goes for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, scores 25.5. Najee gets 9.5. Conklin, because Schultze was out, 6.5. Kyron goes for 20. Elliott, your kicker, goes for 6 point something. And your Cowboys defense, Yahoo says 4, but I think it was actually 12, right? If we add 12 points to your score, maybe it was 16. It was either 12 or 15, yeah. Right? No. It was either 13 or 16, right? If we add 12 points to your score, that would be 16. That looks correct. 12 points, so 16. But anyway, even with that zero, said Lamb and Tyreek outscored your quarterback, and they also outscored Biscuit's quarterback. He had Sam Howell go for 31.5, Amon-Ra 13, Devontae Smith 24.5, Downs only 4.5, Eckler only 4.5, Montgomery 12.5. Said, who is getting the best end of that trade? Here, down 3 weeks down the line, might have been Treatise after all, even though he was out of it at that point. So Montgomery 12.5, Kittle 10.8, Javonte 10, Sanders 10 point something, your kicker, and then the Chargers defense, good score here. They actually had a shutout, but I don't think they did that great in terms of turnovers and yardage wise. Yahoo says 23. It looks like I don't think you had any binks there, Jim. You got about a 16. Would 16 be? No. 15. You must have gotten a 15-point bump to 38. Still, that's a good defensive score. Although a game where they pitch a shutout probably would like a little bit more than that. So Downs and Eckler, only 5 points from each of those guys. Kind of let you down. You had some bye week issues. No Jacobs, no Myers from the Raiders. You would have been better off starting Trevor Lawrence. That was actually an 18-point difference here. So even if you had started Trevor Lawrence, which I don't think you would have, because Howell was like the passing yards leader in the NFL, basically, going against Miami in a game where they were probably going to have to throw, which basically, how it turned out, they were getting blown out. But yet he really didn't do much of anything in this game. Even though, were they at, yeah, they were even at home in that matchup here. Just looking at your bench and what you had. Jim really said even if you had started Trevor Lawrence, which really no reason you would have, nothing you could have done differently to change the outcome. You just needed your guys to perform better in a crucial matchup here at the end of the season. And unfortunately, they were not able to do it for you. Justin, Darkwing Jet, moves to 9-4. He is in third place, while Biscuits drops to 6-7. He is in 8th place. On the outside looking in currently. All right, then we'll just run straight down my line here. We got the Wizard of Wimber going up against Shawshank Athletics. This one ended up being over before it started, most likely, as DK Metcalf pops off for 40 points on Thursday night. Pollard chipped in another 17.5, and the Wizard was well on his way. And this one ended up actually being more than a 100-point margin of victory. Sorry, Josh. As the Wizard of Wimber goes up 229.45 to 127.8. For the Wizard, Goff goes for 34.5. Deontay 13.3. Said DK had a bink, so he had 40.5. Puka had a bink, so he went for 27. So Tony Pollard 17.5. CMC 22.5. Evan Engram there on Monday night. And the Jacksonville kicker, McManus. Evan Engram actually has a big game, goes for 23.2. Rashad White, 19.5. McManus went for 7. And the Tampa Bay defense went with them this week. Yahoo says 13. Looks like about a 15. No, I had 2 binks there, so That would have been like 217, I guess 12. Yeah, 12 points added to the defense there for 25. But yeah, solid numbers up and down the Wizard lineup this week. More than enough to get past Shawshank Athletics. Herbert goes for 32. Amari Cooper, 6.5. D-Hop goes for 19. Garrett Wilson, 8. Kareem Hunt, 6. Zeke goes for 13. Logan Thomas, his only catch is a 2-point conversion. No actual catches in the game. 2 points there. Judy in the flex goes for 8. Zerline goes for 6 point something, your kicker. And your Jets defense this week. Yahoo says 14. Based on the bump, you must have also gotten a 12-point bump there to 26. But, said Josh, 32 from your quarterback. Hopkins, 19, but then single digits most of the rest of the way. Wasn't enough as well, I almost said the Topes, as the Wizard of Winber puts up one of their highest scores of the year. And just at the right time, things kind of falling into place here for me, as needed a big game and a Dub C loss to not only jump ahead in the standings there by 1 game, but also establish a fairly decent point total lead, which I've got now like a 44-point lead on Dub C, meaning I got a pretty decent cushion here. Even if I were to lose in week 14, Dub C would have to outscore me by at least 43.7, something like that. That's not easy. That's a pretty good margin of points there. So hopefully we can hold on to that number 1 spot. Anyway, right. With that said victory, Dub C actually finally catching up, knocking Dub C out of number 1. The Wizard moves up to number 1. He is 10-3, while Shawshank drops to 4-9. He is in 11th place. Still a chance that he drops to the basement after this week and ends up with the Rivers jersey here. All right, then we had a matchup that did not matter except for pride for these two guys. We had Disco going up against Possum Magic. Disco, Brandon AIDS, whatever you want to call him, going up against Possum. Said playing for pride, trying to just throw jabs at each other and see what happens. Have fun. AIDS gets the victory, 173.3 to 152.5. All right, great matchup, actually. Quarterback matchup in this matchup as Gardner Minshew versus Brock Purdy. Minshew goes for 50.8, while Purdy went for 54.5. For AIDS, we got Purdy's receiver, Ayuk, goes for 15.5. Waddle goes for 10. Hollywood Brown actually gets 0. Fortunately, it doesn't cost you in the matchup here. Charbonnet has a good game, but gets hurt near the end of that matchup Thursday. He gets 17. Shane comes back from his injury. I don't know how much of his production was kind of garbage time there, second half, but he did counts no matter what. He scored 2 touchdowns there, 25.5. Okonkwo goes for 9.5. Brees goes for 10.5. Dicker, the kicker, goes for 6 point something. And the Colts defense actually puts up a pretty good score, even though they gave up a lot of points and yards there. They did score a touchdown, had a bunch of sacks, it looks like. Yahoo says 24. Looks like you got 6 points would be too much. So a 3 point bump there to 27. So looks like 50 from Minshew, 25 from Shane, 27 from your defense there. Enough to get past Possum this week. Already said Purdy went for 54.5. Did Possum didn't I guess he sort of had a chance in this matchup. He had Ridley on Monday night. You lost by 21. Ridley scored 7. I mean, Calvin Ridley can certainly pop off for a 30-point game at any point in time. He has done it this year. Well, one time, but he is certainly capable. But unfortunately, he was not able to do it for you this week. Said Ridley went for 7.3. Drake London only 1.8. Rashee Rice goes for 14.5. Pacheco 24, over 100 yards and a touchdown. Bang Bang gets hurt in this game, only gets you 5.3. Ferguson, good game for him on Thursday night there in that shootout. 19.7. Actually, probably one of the better Thursday night games ever. They're usually terrible. That one was actually pretty fun to watch. Zach Moss, hoping for more with Taylor out. He gets, but only 7.7. Hopkins, your kicker from Cleveland, goes for 6 point something. And hoping for more here from the Steelers defense this week at home against Arizona. But they get it handed to them. Yahoo says 5. Your bump looks like 6 to 11 points there. But yeah, a couple guys let you down here. Robinson gets hurt. London only catches 1 pass. Steelers defense really do nothing. For Possum, Kincaid was on a bye. Not really much else I think that you would have done differently here. But yeah. So you guys were pretty much just playing for pride at this point. Something to hold your head up on. And AIDS Disco, Brandon he moves up to 5-8. He is in 9th place. Trying to make a run here for end the season in a respectable spot in the standings here. While Possum drops to 4-9, he drops down to 10th place. All right, everything else had consequences here. All right, Dub C Hooligans was trying to remain in first place, while Boomers was trying to be one of the 6-6 teams to get a victory and keep his playoff hopes not only alive, but actually looking kind of good at this point with 1 week left to play. Dub C trying to hold on to first place and that top seed, the money there, and possibly the Triple Crown, the Tonto's Triple Crown, which, as we know, no one has ever done. And yeah, pretty much, as I said, pretty much everything that could have gone wrong for Dub C Hooligans this week did go wrong. Trading for the Kyler Murray instead of going with, dumping Mayfield was a good decision for Browning. But then deciding it wasn't good enough and going with Kyler Murray. And that ended up costing you not only the victory this week, but I think you said on the line app that I still might have taken first place from you, but it would have been like razor thin, which would have made it pretty interesting coming down here to the last week of the season. But anyway, let's talk about the victor of this matchup. Coming back, from an 0-3 start, quietly winning 5 of his last 6 games. Boomers knocks Dub C from the top position, 179.85 to 162.4. All right, Dak goes for 60. Your receivers, Thielen goes for only 5.5. Christian Kirk makes 1 catch for 3.5. Excuse me. Before hurting himself, and looks like he might be out for a couple of weeks. Just when you need him the most here. It looks like he, what did they say? A core muscle injury that will probably require surgery. So these next 2 weeks, boomers, when said next week, the first week, next week when you're trying to just get into the playoffs, he won't be there for you. And then you said if you do make the playoffs there in week 15, he most likely won't be there for you that week. You've got Devontae Adams, though, on the bench, who had a bye this week. So, not horrible position for you. So, you've got enough running backs and receivers. Other stuff there. Losing Kirk will hurt, but you do have you've got Devontae Adams, so we'll see. You'll have to keep. You had Cortland Sutton running the bench for a while. Guy who somehow keeps scoring touchdowns there. But you're probably going to have to keep him in the lineup and go with Devontae there. Yeah, so he got hurt after only one catch for 3.5. Sutton said he scored a touchdown again, only 2 catches, but one of them was a touchdown, 15.7. Mixon, 2 touchdowns for him. He goes for almost 30. This one was a little bit back and forth on Monday night there, as you had Mixon, and you had Dub C had Jamar Chase. Did you have 2 people there? Monday night, you just had Mixon, right? Oh, yeah, Mixon and Kirk, obviously, on Monday night versus Jamar Chase. And I think Boomers had a decent lead there going into Monday night, even though Jamar Chase had a bink and put up a pretty good score here. Said it wasn't enough thanks to Mixon. Said his 30, he pretty much kept pace with Chase, holding Dub C off here from possibly getting a victory in this matchup. Singletary goes for 5. McBride goes for 23. Hubba Bubba in Carolina scores 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards, gets you 25.5. Your kicker, Butker, goes for about 7 point something. But your New Orleans Saints defense, Yahoo says 1. I believe the actual score is 4. Fortunately, that did not cost you. Excuse me. Only 4 from your defense, 3.5 from Kirk. Said you were able to still hold off Dub C this week. As said, your quarterback scored 60, but for Dub C, Kyler Murray only scored a 26.25. So you had about a 34-point difference there just between your quarterbacks, which is a tough hole to dig yourself out of there, Dub C. Keenan goes for 10.5. AJ Brown, 19.5. So Jamar Chase had a bink. He got 35.5. Stevenson, one of your running backs, though, gets hurt in this game after only 3 points. Actually lost a fumble on the play he was injured. Lost you 2 points there. I believe he has a high ankle sprain. He said he's going to probably miss multiple games. So they play Thursday night this week. It doesn't really matter much to you unless you're really playing for the 1 seed or a bye. I mean, I guess Justin, it could steal it away from you. But if you're Dub C, you're hoping that, all things considered, none of that stuff really matters. All that matters for real is that you're in the playoffs, and hopefully, crossing your fingers, that Stevenson will be able to come back for week 16 or 17 if you make it that far. Gibbs goes for 6.5. Njoku, 3.5. Derrick Henry, 28. Getting him for basically nothing in that trade with Josh. He goes 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Koo gets about 7 point something. And the Rams defense also acquired in a trade with Yinzer Jags there, a late night trade. Yahoo says 16. Looks like you got about a 9 point bump to 25. Said only 50 from your Buns, which was outscored by Boomers there. Several single-digit scores here for Dub C this week, and unfortunately, Gibbs and Njoku don't really do much for you, and you went with the wrong quarterback. I think Browning actually would have scored you like 60 to 65 points, something like that. A huge difference. But it is what it is, as guys would tell you. And with this victory, Boomers, he is the only 6-6 team to move up to 7-6. He is actually now in 5th place. Wow, we've got the Dub C Hooligans dropping from the 1 spot down to number 2. He is now 9-4. All right, then we've got Ed Lager versus From Gags to Riches. Ed was like, Gags team sucks. I've got this one. No problem. I'm going to get win number 7 and probably have a great chance to make the playoffs. Gags to Riches says, not so fast, my friend. And Gags, rising from the dead, says Ed, not so fast, as Gags to Riches comes back to life, reanimates that corpse for 1 week, and knocks off Ed Lager, putting his playoff hopes, not dashing them, but making it a little bit trickier. Gags gets the victory, 185.9 to 166.4. For Gags, Tua, he had a bink. He goes for 43. Godwin goes for 8. Debo, the big factor here in this matchup, scores 3 total touchdowns, scores 35.8. Brandon Cooks a touchdown, 16.5. Jerome Ford, the running back from Cleveland there, doesn't do too much, but he does score a touchdown, gets you 14.2. A.J. Dillon, 9.7. Pitts, 9.1. T. Higgins, 6.5. Aubrey, the Dallas kicker, goes for about 16 or so. And the Texans defense, Yahoo says 18. Gags, looks like your bump was about 12 to 30 points. So not too bad there. So 30 from their D, 40 plus from Tua. So Debo goes for close to 40 there. Close to double digits, at least for most of your guys there. Was enough to get past Ed this week. Patrick Mahomes only goes for 35. Outscored, actually, by Mike Evans, who also had a bink and scored... Patrick Mahomes scored 35.1. Mike Evans scored 35.2. Unfortunately, for Ed's team, it's all downhill from here. Olav scores 16, but Scary Terry scores 0. DeAndre Swift, only 4. Bijan, 11. Freiermuth, 6. Mostert, 12. L. McPherson kicks a couple field goals, gets you about 12.5. And then the Miami defense against Washington here. They scored a touchdown. Did pretty well here. Looks like you got, Yahoo says 18. Your bump looks pretty strong. Nearly, not quite 20. I'm going to say 15 up to about 33 from your defense there. So good scores from both of your defenses in this one. But unfortunately, said Mike Evans and Debo kind of cancel each other out. And said 0 from Scary Terry, 4 from Swift, 6 from Freiermuth. Said you ended up losing by 19. But yeah. Fortunately there, Ed said those couple low scores there you weren't quite able to keep pace with Gags this week, who comes back to life and knocks you down. With this victory, Gags to Riches, he is now he moves up to 4-9, but he is still in 12th place. Ed Lager drops to 6-7. However, he is in 6th place and still in the playoffs if they started today. amongst the group of 6 and 7 there. All right, then finally we had a must-win matchup for basically both of these guys. Hillbillies on PCP versus Yinzer Jags. And so this one so basically a must-win for both of you guys. All sorts of moves being made leading up to this matchup with trades and the waiver wire, things going on. And Hillbillies on PCP finally breaks his losing streak, gets that win number 8, and actually did clinch a playoff spot this week, knocking off Yinzer Jags, actually going over 200 this week, 203.7 to Yinzer Jags 161.9. So in your time of need, Hillbillies on PCP, his team shows up. Let's see. Stroud, though, only 16 completions. 16 completions. More than half of them were to Nico Collins. 34.8 for Stroud. Michael Pittman, actually 27.5. That big factor here was these two guys. Pittman, 27.5. And then Nico goes for 37. Curtis Samuel, 10.5. ETN, 18. Algier goes for 2.5. Kelsey, 12. Taysom Hill actually did turn up. He showed up for you in the flex there, 15.5. Although, just got to point out, though, Brian there, Christian Watson still would have been a better play. Gotten you about 9 or 10, actually 12 more points in the flex there. Twilight Batman, your kicker goes for 8 point something. And then you got the Falcons defense, paid money, some good money for them, and they came through for you in this matchup. Yahoo says 22. It looks like your, let's see, I don't think you had any binks. So you jumped up, looks like 15 to 37. So big, that was probably, you won this one pretty handily, but that move definitely played a big role in the outcome of this matchup. But yeah, your two wide receivers, Pittman and Collins, coming up, scoring, 64, between the two of those, that was a big factor here. As Yinzer Jags, Jalen Hurts goes for 53, but Nico Collins, I think, outscores all of Yinzer Jags receivers. Not quite, but pretty much all by himself. Always a recipe for disaster. Yinzer Jags. Tyler Lockett goes for 9.7. Kupp goes for 16. And Dubs goes for 11. Nico pretty much covered those three by himself. So even though you had an advantage at quarterback here, that really hurt you. So you lost by 42. So let's see. Kamara scores 2 touchdowns, goes for 29. Jalen Warren, though, 6.5. Laporta, also 29. But Dortch, only 3. Boswell, only 2 point something. And then you traded the Rams defense in a good matchup against the Browns there. So, what did we say the score was, like 25 or 28? And you traded for the Chiefs defense, who actually only scored, we actually had to drop points from you. They scored 2. So, what did we say? Atlanta defense scored extra 37? Yeah. So a 35, you lost by 42. 35 of those points, that point differential was from your defense. What did we say the Rams defense scored? Was it like 25? So that would have only been a 12-point difference there. So even if you had the Rams defense, would not have changed the outcome of this matchup here for you, Yinzer Jags, because said even though Kamara and Laporta both scored 30 points here and you had a quarterback advantage, Yeah, there was his two wide receivers. Basically, said Nico covering your three receivers by himself, and then his other two guys going for um, 38 points between the two of them, and said you lost by 42. So that's basically the difference there. Said single digits from Warren, Dortch, and your kicker, while he got Taysom, Kelsey, and ETN to show up. Yeah, basically that was the difference there. And those were the difference makers in this matchup. Coming through, Hillbillies coming through for him when he needed them the most. So again, he gets victory number 8 and did clinch a playoff spot. He is currently the number 4. He's 8-5. He is in the 4 spot. And like I said, I don't believe there's any way you can move up in the standings for the playoffs here. You're going to be either seed number 4 or 5, which those two teams play each other. And then we've got Yinzer Jags, who drops to 6-7. He is just outside the playoff window looking in. He is in 7th place now. All right, those were all of the matchups. So, like you said, we've now got the Wizard of Winburn sitting at the top, 10-3. Dub C now 9-4. He is 43.7, 0.65, something like that, points behind me. So still a chance that Dub C could sneak back that number 1 seed at in the last week of the season here. If so I believe I play Disco and Dub C plays, who was it? Dub C plays Shawshank. So probably a victory for Dub C. Just going to be a matter of can his team. So if I lose, can his team score enough points to take over the overall point total and take that number 1 seed back away? Either way, definitely a bye week for me. We will see. So Darkwing Jut, both him and Dub C are now 9-4. Though Justin is about 50 points behind, 49 or 50. Sure, that's going to be tough. You're basically, Justin, you're hoping that Josh somehow beats Dub C this week, which isn't shaping up. Not looking good for you there. Justin, I mean, who do you play? You get Gags. We saw what Gags did last week, so not a guarantee there. But for Darkwing Jut, for you to steal that number 2 seed, even if I lose and you win, you're too far behind for me to fall out there. You basically need to win and have Dub C lose. Even if you both win, you would need to outscore. You'd have to have a huge week this week and outscore Dub C, said by 50 points. So that's tough to do. So yeah, not looking good for Justin there to take a playoff bye. Probably going to end up being the number 3 seed, most likely. Because even if you lose and Brian gets win number 9, he is way too far behind you in overall points. So if you both have 9 wins, so he cannot overtake you. So Justin, most likely you're locked into that 3 seed. While Brian, now at 8-5, he is going to be either the 4 or 5 seed. While still, said because all of you guys lost, except for Boomers, he still has a chance of getting 8 wins. But between Ed, Detling and Jim, none of you now have a chance to get 8 wins. You all are, your best hope is 7-7, and try to make the playoffs. You're hoping that Boomers loses, and said he plays Yinzer Jags. So yeah, that's going to be a hugely important matchup. It could potentially. It said it could lock Boomers into a playoff spot and knock Detling out. It could get Detling a playoff spot and it could potentially knock Boomers out, or in both. I mean, if Detling loses, he's probably out. Don't think 6-8. So Boomers would definitely, he would be 8-6. That you would need Ed. If Detling loses, he would need both Ed and Jim to lose. But even if Ed also loses, he is 80 points ahead of Yinzer Jags. So even if both Ed and Yinzers drop to 6-8, yeah, Yinzers, unless you have the game of your life, if you lose, you're probably out. If you win, you definitely have a chance. It's those 3 matchups: Yinzers versus Boomers, Ed versus Possum, and Hillbillies versus Biscuits could shake things up there. Like I said, all 4 of you guys are still fighting for those 2 playoff spots. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch here. Glad that we're going to have some action in the final week of the regular season. Not just jockeying for position in the standings here, in the seedings, but just trying to get in or not. Coming all the way down to the final week of the season. So, going to be fun to see what happens here. All sorts of scenarios. And things could get shuffled here at the very end. Whew, all right. So those were the events of week 13 on the fantasy football field. What else? All right. I don't even know where to start with all the other stuff that went on last week. As we know, Disco decided he didn't want to be in the league anymore. And made a handful of trades that really just were too much to let them go. Especially, there couldn't have been any real negotiation back and forth in there. He made 3 trades within a 8 or 9 minute window, something like that, with Yinzers, Ed, and Dub C, each trade getting progressively way more over the line than we could accept in the league. So yeah, just kind of want to give a little bit of my take on all of that stuff here. I hate I hate the trade veto. I will say that outright, first and foremost, because people go back and forth. Oftentimes, there is negotiations back and forth, put into coming to an agreement on trades. That's the reason still you go back to my trade with Jim 10, 12 years ago when he gave me Adrian Peterson and I gave him Eli Manning. That was because we went back and forth on that stuff. And the reason that's the reason why I was so mad is because the managers who are working on these trades said they are putting in work. they're going back and forth. They're trying to negotiate, and if both sides of the trade are happy, it shouldn't matter what the rest of the league believes, because I 100% believe that if we made every trade down to a vote of to veto possible trades, again, I'm sorry, but I 100% believe that there would be perfectly fine trades that would be vetoed simply because a handful of you just don't like it. You think it's stupid. You just said no matter how plausible and reasonable it is. I said I can't say this enough times. This is my opinion. Trades will get vetoed which is to me is a stupid reason that people just don't like it, which is not fair in my opinion to the people who made the trade, negotiated back and forth. That's my take on it. I said again, defending all these trades that you guys just don't like. That is my concern when it comes to the veto, is that you guys will choose to veto trades that you just don't like. And it was pointed out too, also, which is a extremely viable opinion on this matter, that every single one of us has different views on player value. We all see things differently, and you say Josh doesn't. What is it? Shakir from the Buffalo Bills. Josh likes him. Maybe nobody else does, but he does, and that's really all that matters when it comes down to some of these trades. That he feels that there's potential there. Doesn't matter who agrees and who doesn't. If he wants to make that, again, both sides of the trade are happy, then who are we to go in there and say that this can't happen? That said, there has to be a line that cannot be crossed when it comes to just lopsided, straight out, unfair trades. And so these three trades progressively just got worse and worse. Dub C, you had the first trade there. Let me just take a look here at what happened. What was it? You got Hawkinson for Shakir and Kate Otten. The number one tight end still, I believe, has keeper value for next year. For, like I said, the number one tight end in the entire league for Shakir and Kate Otten. That, even though he is the tight end one on the whole season here, and the keeper value and everything, if there was any of these trades that I could kind of see letting slide, it was, I guess, this one. But said these three trades were all, unfortunately, they are bundled together. No way of looking at it. Maybe at the time you didn't know what else was going on, but then Ayuk, a number one wide receiver for Rico Dowdle, a backup running back, and then Waddle and Brees for the Seattle defense, and then Samaje Perine, who Ed had just picked up for $2 off of the waiver wire. So these just got increasingly unacceptable. I hate doing that, but like I said, there has to be a line drawn in the sand that we just cannot cross of lopsidedness in terms of these trades and whatever was going on with Disco. He said he made all these trades were made, and then he said he was quitting the league. That was it. So whatever the reasoning was for it. But yeah, these things were too far across the line sorry guys, that I just could not let those things fly. And I understand that everyone's going to cry keeper value. That's the excuse now. Keeper value. Keeper value for every single trade. And one of the most perplexing things for me about watching the podcast last week is I'm like, I don't know what your guys' true opinion is. There's so much sarcasm about things, about these trades, and how you're in one sentence you're okay with those trades getting revoked, getting vetoed, because they were so ridiculous. But in the second, and then the next breath, you're calling for if those trades were bad, then all these other trades are bad too, and and just like all these different things, and like just going back and forth, and I don't know, and I was just left like watching that podcast, and like and I really hate feeling this way, that like I'm confused as to what your guys' true opinion is. That's all I want to know, is what your true opinions are. But instead there's just so much like sarcasm and snarky comments mixed in, that it makes it really hard to decipher like what your actual opinions are. Because I want to do the best job and be fair to everyone and unbiased, step away from the league, and always look at these trades and say, no matter how much complaining goes on in the lineup and things like that, as long as I can see a reasoning behind it, then I'm not going to do anything about it. So no matter how much people complain, as long as I can see the reasoning on both sides. Unfortunately, these trades was just throwing away most of A's best players for backups, waiver wire fodder, essentially. And I just really, I honestly think that what would maybe fix all of this, or at least help out, is that instead of getting rid of keepers and things like that, if we just move the trade deadline forward earlier than I think for most leagues, we don't have the trade deadline as late as we do. Honestly, because I always actually really just thought we would never get to this point where we had a situation like this, because I want to keep trading in the league as long as we can, because it adds things. It's fun. It mixes things up. But when it comes down to, and I totally understand trading, if you're near the bottom of the standings, you don't think you're going to make the playoffs here, trading for players with potential keeper value, in your eyes at least. Other people may not agree so much, but still the trade can't be ridiculously I understand the future potential, but like the Brees Waddle for P. Ryan Seattle, that can't go. Think something like that. That even said somebody could say, well, keeper value with Shakir. Said that was in the Shakir trade. Like, no matter how much you tried to argue that, like, that's Shakir as a keeper. It's not. if that is your best, you're trading. That can't be your best choice here. I have a hard time. We have to find some kind of balance between trading for the future and not giving away the farm to some like your best players to someone in a lopsided trade that stacks. We don't want anybody stacking their teams unfairly for very little, nothing. So yeah, there has to be some kind of balance line there, and so these trades were definitely over the line in my opinion. Anyway, all right, what else? So yeah, we fixed all that. Disco came back, decided to come back to the league. Always glad to hear that. Good to see that you changed your mind. Glad about it. We'll address real quickly though. I'll probably shoot you a message in the lineup too because I don't really think Disco watches the as we have the weekly little jabs at him on the recap here just for fun. But so he decided to come back. I will say that he commented that a lot of people in the league reached out to him, said want you to stay in, don't want you to see you go. I'm just gonna be forward here and say that I was not one of them. I probably will. Probably should have done it already. Just haven't gotten the chance to. Not because I don't want Bigler in the league. It's great. But my opinion on the matter was he doesn't want to be in the league anymore. It sucks. I'm sorry, but he probably. My assumption was he is making the best decision for himself in the moment, and if he doesn't want to be in the league anymore, yeah, it sucks. Going to be disappointed, but he is a grown man who made a decision, and we just have to deal with it. That's how I approached it. No disrespect to you. I hate what said would be disappointed to see you go, but things keep moving on. Again, like I said, I just assumed that you were doing what you felt best for you, and if that is the case, then I'm happy for you doing what you feel is best for yourself. Fully expected that you were going to announce that you're just going to become a full-time sports bettor. Disco. But anyway, so you decided that you were not going to drop out of the league here. So yeah, glad that all of those things sort of fell back into place here. But yeah, that is why I didn't really say anything to Disco. No, nothing personal, no disrespect there. Nothing about making all those trades on your way out the door or anything. But yeah, that was just how I interpreted the situation, is that you made a decision that you felt was best for you, and I, tip my hat to you for doing that. And we move on. But you are back, so none of that really matters. Anyway, the only other thing that I want to address a little bit is because all these just constantly, I don't understand how serious you guys are in a lot of these comments here, going back to complaining about the ETN trade reversal. So the argument is that Matt made a trade a couple years ago, and I believe he wasn't in the lineup at the time after he quit. Actually went back and looked to see what he was actually talking about. And when it comes to that, so I don't really remember that situation. However, going back and finding that trade and seeing what was going on, that trade took place in week 8. It was mid-October. Okay, and you traded for Kelsey. You got Travis Kelsey in this trade and Juju Smith-Schuster. Kelsey, who had keeper potential also. So your argument is that you made that trade because you thought Juju could be a keeper. Um, you're making in mid October. You're making trades based on keeper value. Like, I find that difficult to believe entirely. Also, again, you got Travis Kelce. You would keep Juju Smith-Schuster before you would keep Travis Kelce, which I think you ended up trading both of them away later on in that season. And getting back to the ETN trade too, I don't think that the Kelce Juju trade was. I don't know if you immediately said, "Hey, I didn't know that Juju couldn't be a keeper," so that was the whole entire. The difference to me is that in this trade, Brian and Disco both made it very clear that they believed ETN had a year left to be a keeper. Obviously, they were both wrong, and they made it very clear, especially Disco, that was the basis for this trade. ETN's keeper value. If he doesn't have that, this trade does not happen. In the trade where you acquired Kelce and Juju, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not gonna, but I find it hard. It would be hard to convince me that your entire reasoning for that trade is because you thought Juju could have a keeper. Like, I understand that you thought that he could, and maybe he did. If he did, whatever, that influenced the trade, but was not the overriding factor. Second of all, we resolved the ETN issue almost immediately after the trade was made. If it had been the next day, if it had actually been, depending on how the timing of the trade, if games had actually been played, honestly, if it hadn't been resolved within like 3 hours after the trade had been made, if it had been a day or two till someone or Disco realized that he can't keep ETN, said one of the reasons that I was willing to go back on it because because they were so vocal about that being the main factor in this trade, and two, we were getting attacked. We were resolving the issue almost immediately. I will tell you 100% that if a day or two had passed before somebody had said, "Hey," and not like 2 hours, instead of 2 or 3 hours, if like 2 or 3 days had passed before somebody said, "Oh shit, ETN can't be a keeper," my answer, much like what was probably the situation with the Kelce Juju trade, my answer would have been the same thing as then. Tough shit. But in my opinion, because we resolved it immediately and said, "Hey," so the situations, they aren't the same, in my opinion. I'm not going to say that I know what was going through your head at the time, Matt, with that trade, but said going back and actually looking at it and seeing what happened and seeing what you were talking about, I don't know if you unless you realized that, I don't know what the timing was when you realized Juju couldn't be a keeper. If it had been more than a day or two, my opinion on the matter would have been the same. I think in cases, but your trade definitely, you almost cannot convince me that, and that's the other big factor here in the ETN trade here this year, is that these guys were extremely vocal about the fact that ETN's keeper status was the reason this trade was made. Like 95% of the reason this trade was made. Your trade said you acquired Travis Kelce in that trade as well. So you would have a really, really hard time convincing me that that trade was made entirely on the fact that you thought on the potential of keeping the long-term potential of Juju Smith-Schuster over Travis Kelce. And this was 2019, I believe. So Kelce was in his prime, hitting his prime. That you would keep Juju Smith-Schuster before you would keep Travis Kelce is an argument you may try to make, but you are not going to convince me that was the case. So anyway, I just wanted to address that real quick here, and why I feel like I know you guys probably when I started getting into this, now you're rolling your eyes like, oh, we get it, we don't need to hear this stuff, but from my position as the commissioner, it means something. It is important to me that I explain stuff. And when you guys attack me with accusations and things like that, I'm going to try to defend myself, explain myself, and the decisions I make. 'Cause I don't take the decisions lightly. It offends me when people, even if you're joking, and like I said, oftentimes with a lot of you guys, it's hard to tell when you're joking and when you're being serious, especially in like the Line app with text messages and things like that. Like, I do my best. I said if the ETN and McCDMC trade, I don't care if Brian gets Christian McCaffrey. You're like, people are like, well, you don't want Brian to get Christian McCaffrey. I don't care who gets who. Like, I have to step out of the league, out of my position, and into the commissioner's shoes, and look at that, and I don't make decisions. Like I said, it hurts and it offends me when you assume or accuse me of making decisions based on even if you're just kidding, I get it, but decisions for selfish reasons, for my own, what I think are my own best interests, that is never ever the case. Because I would not deserve this position if I was going to be doing those kinds of things. And first and foremost, above everything else, I should mention that this is just a fantasy football league. Everybody else, we're friends first. I'm not going to fuck you guys over for myself for some stupid reason like that I think that I'm going to help out my team and win, maybe help myself win. No. I never, ever, ever going to do that. And if I ever actually do that, you should remove me immediately from the position. But I'm not going to do that. Anyway. Whew. So, those are the things we went over. I know that there's a vote up on the Line app about whether we keep keepers or not, but we've actually, I don't know you guys, we've done keepers for over 10 years now and have never had a problem until this came up. We've had some trades that people have cried about, things like that. So I don't know I'm not sure getting rid of keepers is the answer. I quite enjoy it. It makes things tricky, challenges you at the draft, things like that. And I honestly think that if we just, and I hate to do it, but if we just made the trade deadline earlier than, I believe it was, than the last 2 weeks of the regular season. So it was like this past Saturday, right before week 13, so that week 13 and 14 would be the only weeks where there is no trading. If we bump that back to like after maybe week 10, something like that, where it's much harder for those people who are in the bottom of the standings at the time to said basically make big trades of their best players, where you would just make the deadline at a point where most people are at least still in the hunt, and they're not gonna be trading for keeper value in the season. If you want to trade for keeper value for players, you can do that during the off season. But again, trades are fun. They mix things up, and I like having them, and I don't want to take them away as part of the season, because I know you guys like it. So yeah, that's basically why I always try to keep it as late as possible. But maybe that just isn't going to be something we can do anymore. Hopefully, this was just an isolated incident. So all these years, I don't want to make any like drastic changes and decisions over one situation. Said after years and years and years where things have been okay, we haven't had any real problems here. But yeah, I believe that there's enough going on that people are going to want to discuss it in the off season and at the draft next year, and look into it. At least look into trading, changing, not trading, things about the league here for next year. So, all right, my throat's starting to hurt. It's been over an hour. So yeah, those are the things that I just wanted to address. I'm sure they'll find you guys, if anybody even watches, ways will be found to critique all the stuff that I had to say. But anyway, so yeah, we addressed those trades that had to be reversed. Said we got Bigler back into the league. Talked about that a little bit. Wanted to make it clear that why I didn't really try to pull him back. That said, some people reached out, tried to pull him back in, but that's why I chose not to do that. And it was nothing personal, of course. So yeah, those were the three things: the trades, Disco coming back, and then the ETN keeper stuff, and Juju there. Explain my point of view on that, which I'm sure Detling will just say is a bunch of bullshit anyway. So, but I should make clear to everybody, even though nobody watches this really anyway, what I'm thinking should be out there for you guys to be aware of, and not just sitting in my commissioner tower, making decisions all at my own whim here. Oh, all right. So, guys, week 14. We can't clap anybody out because we already clapped everybody out who is out. Everybody else has still got a chance, which is the way we like it going into the last week of the regular season. Unfortunately, there were a lot of injuries this past week. Don't want that anymore. May all of your teams meet or exceed expectations this week. No more injuries. Everyone has fun. The season has flown by, so this is the end of the regular season. Gags, Josh, Tree, Disco, those guys already on to looking forward to next year. So a couple other guys there between Boomers, Ed, Detling, and Jim. 2 of those 4 guys are going to be sad after this week and not going to make it. Well, yeah. So while half of us are looking forward to the next couple weeks, and with trophy aspirations, Tonto's Demise aspirations ahead. Only one of us, in the end, only one of us ends the season happy. So, to all the guys in the league, though, it's been another great season. It's been fun to watch. A lot of back and forth stuff going on. And yeah, so the playoff chase has been interesting, fun to watch. It's been another great year for everybody. At least, maybe, I mean, we all want to win, and I think that's why it causes some problems there. But some emotional things go on during the course of the season. Yeah, looking forward to, as always, having the group, get back together and do it again next year. So we will see you back here next week to discuss the events of Week 14, see who's in, see who is out, see who ends up where in the playoff seedings, and yeah. And then we will head into the Tonto's Demise Season 21 playoffs, starting next week. We will only have, only 2 matchups in Week 15, and 16. All right, guys. Thanks for another. Well, we'll do that. We'll address. We'll thank you for another great season next week. It's a little bit too early, I guess, but yeah, it should be a very interesting final week of the regular season. I know we've had seasons before where everybody was either in or out going into the last week. It was just a matter of would seedings change a little bit. But yeah, things are still pretty about. It's fun to have things. I know. I keep repeating myself and saying the same shit over and over again, but just it makes it way more fun when it comes down and to the last week of the season to have a bunch of people fighting for a couple playoff spots there. So it makes it way more exciting. Win or lose, it's going to be fun to watch, whether you are one of those 4 guys or you're just watching. I hope that you guys, even if you're already out, you're just enjoying watching the back and forth and seeing how things shake out. That's how it was for me last year. So ended up just kind of watching and seeing how things shake out. As difficult as it was last year, to be basically out before before anything even happened. I think was I 0-7? I was 0-6 or 0-7, and I'll tell you, on Disco, I understand it was hard, but you gotta roll with the punches, because you're gonna have those seasons where everything just kind of sucks, and you want to win. I understand, but it can't be you can't have it all the time. Just kind of gotta roll with the punches and come back and try it again next year. Luck. It might just feel like bad luck for a season here, but things always change, and you never know. It's more, like I said, you want to win, but we want to have fun too and enjoy ourselves. The joy of competition there above more than anything else there. Even if you're 0-7, starting 0-7, just having fun. Playing your matchups, trying to take. If all the best you can do is play spoiler to other people, that's find some fun in that if you can. But anyway, I just gotta stop. Just quit. Kevin, your dog just took a shit over there. Please go clean it up. And we will be back here to talk about the events next week of the final week of Tonto's Demise Season 21 regular season. To see what happens, see who's in, see who's out, where the standings are, who and what's going on, and who's going to have a bye, who's going to play who in round 1 of the Tonto's Demise playoffs. All right, everybody. No injuries. Meet or exceed expectations. And come back here next week. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening, watching, or whatever it is you do. If there is anyone ever going to hear this. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.